So tonight's talk was inspired by the new dojo, because here we are in the new dojo. If you haven't seen it yet, come look at it. We're gonna talk about be like water, because Catherine asked me earlier today, what are you going to talk about? And I was sitting there at the desk and the fountain are in different places now. And so I was just looking around like, what am I going to talk about? And I saw the fountain right there, and I thought, ooh, be like water. So most of you guys have heard the famous Bruce Lee quote and lots of other quotes about water, but I'm gonna give you one of these. So I'm going to start with these quotes as a jumping off point and then go into more detail. So Bruce Lee says, I think I have two Bruce Lee quotes, maybe just one. He says, be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes a cup. If you put water into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. If you put water into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Now, water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. So, I like how he calls me his friend in that quote. So Bruce Lee was onto something, and he was maybe the most famous martial artist in the last century. He was a great philosopher and a great physical martial artist, but it's really his philosophy that made its way into movies and the TV shows and his writings that is my favorite part about Bruce Lee. So I really like this visual of being water from both a martial arts, like a physical practice perspective, and also from a perspective of just anywhere in life. If you look at it physically in practice, our style is very similar to Jeet Kune Do, and it really makes sense. So, like, let me steal you. Come on, sir. Back and ready to go. So, if we look at, can you see both of us, ma'am? Okay, we'll try. So if you look at like a physical attack coming, like a looping hook punch, let's say that he's doing this side. So I can block it like this, but this is not the ideal thing to do, right? More ideal would be to duck and get out of the way of the punch. So I'm like water and flowing in that way. Or the best thing to do would be, if he gives me a little bit of room and he comes in with a punch, is to like absorb it and really flow with your partner's energy and use it to throw him. Thank you, sir. So if you have this idea of like meeting power against power or force against force, you recognize it doesn't work as well as being able to absorb your partner's energy, being able to flow with whatever they're giving you. And so their punch or their guard or whatever it is that you see is a physical impediment for you. You can find ways around it if you flow. And I like the idea of thinking of water. What was the next thing that I wrote? Oh yeah. So thinking of water is like a mirror. So water can be still, and you can see yourself in it. And if you are the same, if you are clear and you are still, then other people can see themselves more clearly. If you're not like inserting yourself too much, think of this as like in a conversation with somebody. If you are muddy water, if you're coming into the conversation and there's too much going on, your mind is not clear, or you're bringing too much of yourself, of your own ego, then it becomes like an argument or a one-sided conversation, rather than if you're totally clear, the conversation goes very differently. You're much less likely to find resistance. You're more likely to just kind of flow with the conversation. And you want your mind to be the same way. You want your mind to be clear like a mirror. And the beautiful thing of a clean mirror is it reflects everything in front of it perfectly. So our minds are hardly ever like that, like a clear mirror. Our minds are usually dirty, again, because we're bringing too much of ourselves into it. Our ego is too involved. And if that's true, it's like looking through a dirty mirror or a dirty window. You can't see things very well. But if you are totally clear, then everything around you, everybody else, and all of reality is reflected crystal clear. And it's obviously very difficult to get to that point. It requires you to let go of all of the ripples. So the universe is always throwing tiny rocks at you, or sometimes it's throwing giant rocks at you. And if you are able to just be calm and settle and maybe even sit just physically still, then you'll notice that those ripples start to just flow out from you, and you get totally calm, peaceful, and clear. And from there, you're able to reflect everything clearly and see everything clearly. I like this quote from the Tao Te Ching, where there are a couple places it talks about water, but this one is one of my favorites. It says, "The highest good is like water. Water gives life to the 10,000 things and does not strive. It flows in places people reject, and so is like the Tao." So the highest good is like water, and it gives life to the 10,000 things and does not strive. So if you think of this idea in martial arts as striving without striving that I talk about all the time, it is this effortless effort. And water does not have effort. Water just is. It just moves in whatever shape you're putting it into, or if it's like a stream, it's just flowing with whatever shape the stream is. The water isn't like coming up to a rock and thinking, no, I gotta go through this rock. It's totally fine with going around in whatever direction is most effortless. It's easy. And so if we can strive like water, which is to say basically strive without striving, then everything in our physical practice becomes a lot easier as you're absorbing your partner's energy and using it against them instead of fighting against it. But also you feel the same way in life. If you're able to strive without striving, then you just continue to flow. And the riverbed might take you this way or it might take you that way, but it always seems easy. And I was thinking about this earlier in terms of the way that we want to be playful with our practice and playful with life. The stream has a direction. It's got one direction. It's not like you're going to come to a stream one day and it's going south, and then the next day you come to the stream and oops, it's all of a sudden going north. It's not going to happen. It's got that direction of flow. But the water is not just totally straight. I mean, it plays and it kind of sloshes up onto the side, one side then the other, and it comes up on a rock and it plays around it. And it has this ability to kind of do both simultaneously. It's got its direction that it's flowing in, yet it's not rigid. It is able to play within that. And so we can kind of get too flowy and too fluid in a way that we just kind of float away into nothing. We have no direction and no real form to what we're doing. But water, it can stay within this direction, within its circumstances, yet it can still be playful and enjoy where it's at without completely just sloshing out and drying out in the sun. It says it flows in places that people reject and so is like the Tao. And this book is difficult to understand. It's very deep and very simple and very dense and very empty at the same time. But I like thinking of water as flowing in places that people reject, and having the ability to do that, where you can find those little cracks to flow through, but where somebody else might come upon a situation and feel rigid and feel like they're stopping it and I can't do this. If you're more like water, you just automatically find a way. and where other people can't go, you can go. This is something that we want to be able to do with our physical practice, where you might find, for example, there's somebody who's much bigger and stronger, and maybe you're pushing hands, or maybe you're sparring or grappling, and many people go up to this big partner, and while they're bowing, they're just kind of like, okay, I'm going to have to deal with this person now. But it's because they have this preconceived notion of, I'm about to just run into this wall, and it's going to be really difficult for me to deal with this. As opposed to, if I'm like water, I move up to this partner, and I'm totally unfazed by it. I just flow with whatever that bigger partner gives me. I could be with a tiny partner, I could be with a partner who's 3 times my size, and whatever energy they're giving me, I'm just going with it. So, water doesn't have an ego, and water doesn't have the fear like we do, and that's why it can flow in places that people reject and that other things can't flow through. I have another quote. This one's also from the Tao Te Ching, I believe, right? All streams flow, yeah? So this one says, all streams flow to the sea because it is lower than they are. Humility gives it its power. If you want to govern the people, you must place yourself below them. If you want to lead the people, you must learn to follow them. So I'm not really going to get into politics right now, but this visual of streams flowing to the sea because it's lower than they are, this humility that water shows. Water, again, it doesn't go uphill, it goes downhill, and in that way it's able to enter the sea. And if you think of the sea as this vast kind of spiritual well, if you're a stream acting like a person, you're always trying to fight against the hill, you're always trying to fight against the current, and you're like trying to go up, and everything is very painful. This is our experience of life. It's always suffering. But if you allow yourself to be like water and flow downstream, you eventually find yourself in the ocean. And if you're a human being, you start heading into the ocean, and you start getting really scared, and you think, I'm going to get lost in the ocean. You think, I'm no longer going to be a stream, I'm just going to be part of this vastness, and I'm lost. Or if you think of yourself as like a wave, you think of like, I'm crashing up on the beach, and then I get absorbed back in, and I'm just gone. I don't exist anymore. But that's how a person thinks of it. But water doesn't care about all that. Water is totally happy to just return back into the sea. And that's really where you arrive at with, the ultimate state of being humble that we want to reach with our meditation practice is enlightenment, where we can totally go beyond this urge to stay separate and this individuality. We can just let it go, and we get back absorbed into that which is bigger than everything. It's a feeling of surrender. To be truly humble is to just let everything go, and then to allow yourself to be absorbed into something bigger than yourself means that I'm okay with not existing. I'm okay with not imposing myself or my views on anything. I'm just here. I'm just giving myself. And if we can take that kind of sense into our meditation is going to be so much better, because we're no longer like us needing to have a great meditation or us needing to get anywhere with our practice. It's just, consciousness. It's just flowing, natural and easy. Another thing that I have written down is water is unattached. So if you are truly unattached, you're able to flow in and out of whatever situation without getting stuck. But you can also think of water in its different forms. So water can become ice. And this is one of the cool ideas of thinking about water and ourselves, because we become different things, and we take on different forms, and we certainly have different moods, and we approach things and people and situations differently. Ice can be very hard, it can be very rigid, it can be very solid. But what I like about ice is it will eventually crack, it will eventually break, and then it just returns to being fluid and just returns to water, what it naturally is. When we encounter situations where we turn ourselves into ice, it's kind of helpful to recognize, even if I break right now, even if my ego doesn't get what it wants, I don't win this argument, or I don't win this round of sparring or grappling with my partner, I'm still going to, at the end of the day, when I crack and when I break, I'm just going to resume being water. Even if that doesn't happen until I die. Like eventually, I'm just going to go back to just being this nothingness and everythingness. So water can become hard, can become rigid, but it will eventually all just melt away, especially with global warming. So all ice will eventually become water. So it can also be liquid. I had to look at my notes to remember that. So it's ice, it's hard, but it can also be liquid and smooth, and it can flow. And this is kind of mostly like what we think of, because water, when you think of water, it's not ice, it's just in its liquid form. And that's where it can also be very powerful, because water, it seems like ice would be the strongest form of water, but it's in fact like the flowing and crashing water, like Bruce Lee says, it can crash. And that water on that stone, in the beginning it just looks like the water's running into the stone and it's just flowing around it, but eventually water is going to wear down a mountain. It will just keep going and wear, either it's going to wear it down or it's going to just put a hole right through the middle of it. And this sense of being able to continue against seemingly impenetrable or insurmountable odds, and like we run up against a wall, and instead of just giving up and turning back around, we just keep going. We just keep flowing through it, and know that eventually you're going to wear down that problem. You're going to wear down whatever it is that you're feeling stuck with. But the ultimate form of water is what you get when you heat it up. And if you think of like being under pressure, like what do we get? What do we become? Most of us, we are like ice, and so under pressure we crack, and it's very painful. But if you can be like water that becomes steam, when we get put over that fire and we are heated up, we can transcend. And all you need is just the tiniest little hole in the lid of the pot, and we can just bust out and take on absolutely any shape and actually just ascend into the heavens dramatically. And water that becomes steam can even burn through other things if it needs to, which I experience regularly when I'm cooking. I forget, steam hurts. But it's really powerful to think of ourselves like this. When we're put under pressure, we can actually transform into a completely different state and feel like a completely different state of matter. And steam, it billows, and it can completely disperse, and in that way become just like a stream entering into the ocean. And it can rise up, and it can burn, and it can do all kinds of amazing things, but only if it allows itself to transform. So this is the beautiful thing about water is it's very changing and shifting and malleable. So think of this in your meditation practice, just like you do in your physical practice, to be formless and to be able to take on the shape of anything, to flow and to be able to move into whatever space there is available, to be able to get around any kind of impediment or object, to be able to swallow up, and things that come up against you just get drowned in you, to be able to become steam and just float up and become absorbed into nothingness and everythingness. So when we meditate, we often put these walls in our way. We come up against them and we feel stopped, or we feel like we're crammed into a pot with a lid on top of us. But allow yourself to just become steam and just flow out into whatever else it is. There's this thought that you're having. Instead of feeling stopped by it, just flow right around it. There is this discomfort that your body has. Instead of being attached to it, just feel it melt away. And you want your physical form to feel as close to water, as close to steam as possible, just like we want our mental form, our internal energy to take on the same shape. So when you sit, don't allow yourself to be attached, allow yourself to flow physically and mentally like water. Sit.